In shows like True Blood, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or even the movie Twilight, oftentimes these characters are dealing with the messy lives of being a teenager or adolescent or young adult while balancing out fighting monsters and or being a monster themselves. What if I told you there was a tabletop RPG that replicated that very experience of being a messy teenager while dealing with being a monster on the down low? Well, today viewers, we're going to be talking about Monsterhearts 2 by Avery Alder. So as I said earlier, Monsterhearts 2's premise is based upon living the messy lives of socially awkward young people while they are also monsters on the side. Think of, say, Twilight or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as I mentioned earlier. From dealing with puberty and rebellious phases to dealing with your strange to call family history, this game can have wild ranges, and you as the players get to explore the nervous breakdowns of being both a werewolf and being in high school with all the hormones of, well, a 18-year-old. And best part about it, all resolution done via a 2d6. You guessed it, this game is a powered by the Apocalypse engineered game. And the best part is that Avery Alder, the creator, a queer trans game designer based in Vancouver, Canada, has been in the industry for 10 plus years. Avery's games have focused on community, relationships, and a lot of queerness. So, a lot of her games are focused on those three aspects, from The Quiet Year, Dreams Askew, and Variations on Your Body. They all have a focus on the queer, mystical, and community-oriented gaming. So, when you dive into Monsterhearts 2, expect there to be a lot of messy qualities, and expect to have a lot of fun. Kicking butt, crying about boys and girls, and maybe occasionally losing yourself to your darkest, deepest fears. Alright, so we understand the background to Monsterhearts 2, but what about the mechanics? One of the biggest highlights of Monsterhearts 2 is the skin, or aka skins. Skins are the kind of archetype, stat-wise and lore-wise, you as a PC pull from. It's where your character gets their magical energy, or say, their demonic energy. From the lonely and mooded ghost, to the pompous queen, or the smartsy-fartsy Prometheus. Skins provide your character with depth of how they have their magical or demonic or mystical energy, and what defines them differently than, say, NPCs. And the best thing about skins is there are plenty of homebrew and non-homebrew skins for you as players to choose from. From Skin Deep to Second Skins by Feeney, there's plenty of them. In fact, there's even a whole Reddit thread on Monsterhearts which has loads of homebrew skins. Even a magical girl skin, which, wow, that is really cool. And every skin gives positive modifiers as well as negative modifiers. And those stats that they give modifiers to are hot, cold, volatile, and dark. Starting off with hot, this stat indicates your attractiveness, usually used to seduce or be flirtatious, or even to be risque and use your sex move. Hot is all about using your attractiveness to its full advantage to get your way. Next is cold. It's how calculating and unwavering you are against cruelty. If someone is taunting you to engage in a fight, you might use your cold stats to add a modifier or decrease your roll to keep yourself level-headed. Next is volatile. This means how impulsive or aggressive and quick-tempered your actions can be. It can relate to how do you do in a fight, or how fast can you run away from an enemy. That's usually when you use the volatile stat. Finally is dark. Dark deals with the supernatural and mysterious. It's usually related to the move Gaze into the Abyss, where your character gazes into their deepest, darkest self and inspects themselves for whatever particular reason the game might have. All of these stats you're going to have +2 in, all the way down to a -1 or a -2. It depends on the kind of skin you choose, and even that, skins have some variety. So look through each of the skins and see what works for you as a player. And another beautiful aspect to this game is strings. Strings are essentially what ties your character to another character, and what you as a player character can use to manipulate and take advantage of others. For example, let's say the character, Jeremy, has a crush on Will. Jeremy knows a couple of secrets on Will, so Jeremy decides to do some flirting with him. He wants to use the move Turn Someone On, aka Will. But Jeremy has a secret. He knows that Will is in the occult, and he's also a demonic worshiper. That information can be used as a string on Will, the NPC, and that can have a number of different beneficial and or negative aspects to a role. You can add 1 to your roll against them, you can subtract 1 from your roll against you can also offer them, aka the PC, an experience point to do what you want, as well as force them to hold steady in your order to carry out a certain action. Finally, you can also add a condition or a plus in terms of harm when you go to lash out on them physically. So strings can be really useful mechanically as well as narratively to show how much your character is manipulating another PC or NPC. Next are moves, and there are a lot of them, so just stick around for a little bit. There's basic moves that all player characters get. There's MC moves, aka Master of Ceremony, that are specific to the GM. There are grown-up moves where your character acts not like a pretentious teenager, but instead like a grown-up being responsible or taking care of others. Next are specific moves to your skin called the sex move, which I think you can kind of understand why they're called the sex move. Finally, there are specific moves that your skin has that aren't sex moves, but are specific to your, skin. For example, the Prometheus, which I play in my Monsterhearts 2 game, is the Firebringer, where the Prometheus creates something wondrous, but with some caveats and consequences to the side. All other skins have something similar. So overall, you have basic, MC moves, grown-up moves, your sex move, and your skin-specific move. It's a lot to balance, but just have this reference sheet up here, and you'll be good to go for your next game. The final mechanic I want to cover in Monsterhearts 2 is conditions and subsequently death. Since this world is gritty and you're dealing with the messy lives of teenagers can apply a lot of labels and conditions that are harsh. Conditions allow you to take advantage of someone, and generally add a +1 to your roll. Condition can be something scathing, gossipy, or interpersonal labor that's related to that specific NPC or PC. If you played City of Mist, it kind of is similar to that label system in that game. Conditions are also removed depending upon when they're dealt with appropriately, or if the social circuit that is applied doesn't exist anymore. For example, let's say the same character, Jeremy, is in a group of 5, and he's the nerd of the group. That condition, nerd, might give him a -1 on his rolls. But if, say, the entire group suddenly disbands because they're all killed by werewolves, then does that condition still apply? Obviously not. As for death in this game, when you take your 4th harm, you just die. Now, as a PC, if you want to avoid death, you can erase all of your harm and then become your darkest self. Your darkest self is when you follow the script in your skin. Usually your darkest self is when your character is at their lowest point and you can't control the actions that they're about to do. It is generally the time they lose sight of their entire humanity and might harm people around them and do awful things that you as a player and even your character are going to regret afterwards. So, avoiding death in the effect of looking at your darkest self is often a decision you need to make, knowing the full consequences of the actions that are going to happen, and that sometimes the narrative might call for you to die when it's your time. And those mechanics only cover some of the basics to the game. Monsterhearts 2 is a beautifully woven game about messy teenagers doing the best they can in a messy world with, even messier abilities, like being able to transform into a werewolf, or being immortal, or a ghost, or being able to speak to animals for all we know. It's a story about messy teenagers balancing school with their personal monster identities. And the game can be an outlet for you to explore a lot of intense and emotional conversations on toxic relationships, community, and even what it means to love and to lose someone. Of course, like I mentioned earlier briefly, this game does deal with some heavy subject matter. So fortunately, there's plenty of content on safety tools and managing the expectations of your players, so definitely give that a check out. This game can be really intense. In fact, I have a video on safety tools over here to make your game a little bit more enjoyable for everyone else. Finally, there's a number of different settings, but just be sure when you're creating a setting for this game that you frame it around teenagers. This game wasn't really built to deal with adults, and it kind of pulls away from the whole end goal, which is to explore the crooked lives of, well, prepubescent teenagers. Now, of course, you can cover characters who are maybe right out of high school or early college. Just make sure that the same messy qualities of dealing with your troubled past and the anxiety of being a teenager are still prevalent throughout your story. So, if you want to support the creators, check them down below in the description box. And as always, I'm your average day queer host, Blurdy Disposition. Y'all have an awesome day. Ciao, y'all!